Why does a 10-year-old girl have to live alone with her grandfather every day? And why did the neighbor who came to visit one day turn pale and run home without saying a word? Is there something in that house that shouldn't be there? Uncle Sammai is now 70 years old. Every morning, he walks to school with his 10-year-old niece, Nong Ploy. His wrinkled hands gently hold her little hand. His eyes are full of love. The neighbors admire his attentiveness, especially Mrs. Somjit, the next-door neighbor. Mrs. Somjit is a 60-year-old woman. She has lived alone for many years. She likes to come and talk with Uncle Sammai on the porch. But lately she has started to feel strange. Every time she stops by in the afternoon, Uncle Sammai always closes the door tightly. Even on hot, humid days, she starts to notice that the noise inside the house is unusually quiet. Even Nong Ploy doesn't run around like she used to. One day, Mrs. Somjit intends to stop by to see Uncle in the afternoon. Holding a basket of hot fried bananas in her hand, she steps up the wooden stairs slowly. The wood creaks under her feet. A gentle breeze blows through the wooden lid. The smell of fried bananas floats in the air mixed with the musty smell. She raises her hand to knock on the door. There is no response. She leaned her ear against the wooden door. Silence. But then she heard a soft sound. A girl's voice. Not laughter, but a shaky moan similar to sobbing. Her heart beat fast. Her hand started to shake. He turned the knob. The door was unlocked. The door slowly opened. The house was dim. The thick curtains were tightly drawn. There was a dim light through the cracks in the curtains. She took one step at a time. The musty and damp smell hit her nose. She saw shadows moving in the room. The sobbing became clearer. But no one came out to greet her. Mrs. Somjit took a deep breath. She walked to the bedroom at the back. Her footsteps were light as if she was afraid of breaking something. Her hand shook when she touched the bedroom door. She pushed it open slowly. The sight made her almost fall. Nong Ploy sat on the floor. Her hair was disheveled. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her eyes were swollen. Her face was covered in tears. Next to her, a picture frame was broken. Shards of glass were scattered all over the floor. Uncle Sammai stood with his back to her. He was shaking. Her hands were clenched. His breathing was rapid. Nong Somjit stood still. She felt like her body was stone. The air in the room was heavy. It was like all the sounds had disappeared in an instant. Suddenly, Uncle Sammai turned back. His eyes were red. His face was covered in tears. Not because of anger, but because of deep pain. He knelt down, holding his niece tightly. The sobs of both of them were in unison. Nong Somjit looked at the picture in front of her, confused and shocked. She tried to ask what happened. Nong Ploy didn't say anything. She just pointed at the wall. She turned to look. There was an old photo hanging. It was a picture of a young woman. She looked very much like Nong Ploy. Under the picture, there was a name written in shaky handwriting. Ploy's mother. Mrs. Somjit began to understand. Tears slowly flowed from her eyes. Her heart felt heavy. But she didn't know everything yet. There was something in this room that was still hidden. In one corner of the room, there was an old wooden drawer. It looked like it had just been left open. Some documents were scattered about. Mrs. Somjit walked over and picked up a piece of paper. It was a school report. She read it and frowned. Ploy's name was crossed out. It was replaced with the words, "Cannot attend school again." Below was a short note. Abnormal behavior, depression, unresponsive to learning. Uncle Sammai muttered. His voice was as soft as the wind. The teacher said that Ploy was talking to someone who didn't exist. Mrs. Somjit got goosebumps. She turned to look at Ploy again. The little girl was still staring at the corner of the room. It was like she saw something that others couldn't see. Her small lips moved. She whispered softly. "Mom said don't tell anyone. Mrs. Somjit's body froze. The whisper was soft, but it was clear enough for her to hear every word. She stepped back. Her eyes were still fixed on that corner. Uncle Sommai slowly looked up. His bloodshot eyes were shaking. Ploy says this every day. The sound in the room fell silent again. It was like everything stopped. Suddenly the curtains swayed, even though the window was still closed. A cold wind blew through the middle of the room. Mrs. Somjit's hair stood on end. She quickly turned to the window. There was no gap for the wind to come in. There was no crack, but something sounded in her ears. Soft whisper. It sounded like a woman's voice. He shouldn't forget me. She turned back quickly. Nong Ploy was still staring at the same corner. Her small hand raised to point again. Her lips moved. Mom is still there. Uncle Sommai stood up, walked straight to that corner, raised his hands to bow lightly as if communicating with someone. Mrs. Somjit held Ploy's hand tightly. Did you really see Mom? The girl nodded. Mom comes to play with me every night. Mom cries a lot. Her tone was not fearful, sad, and serious. Mrs. Somjit trembled. Her head was full of questions. But before she could say anything, the back door, that should have been locked, opened slowly by itself. The sound of the old hinges groaning. A dark shadow moved through the narrow corridor. A faint scent of ancient perfume floated over. A scent she remembered smelling long ago. Mrs. Somjit did not dare to move. But Ploy got up and walked to the door. The girl spoke softly. Mom is here. Uncle Sommai quickly grabbed her niece's wrist. His voice trembled. Don't go. Stay here with Grandpa first. But Ploy smiled. Faint smile without fear. There was only longing and warmth. Mom said she would take me to a place where no one would tease me anymore. Her voice was soft. But in Mrs. Somjit's ears, it was cold. The dark shadow behind the door moved again. It was as if there was a woman standing in the dim light. A vague figure. Long hair. A white dress that fluttered without wind. Mrs. Somjit opened her mouth. But no sound came out. An indescribable feeling overflowed. It was as if the whole room was covered by some curtains. Suddenly, Nong Ploy flinched. Tears flowed. She cried very hard. Mom said that I have to choose. Stay with Grandpa. Or go with Mom. Uncle Sommai collapsed to the floor. He held his chest tightly. Tears flowed. Grandpa apologizes. Grandpa shouldn't have left my mom alone that day. The dark shadow moved closer. The coldness spread throughout the room. Ploy shivered. She was about to take a step forward. But then, a voice broke in. A voice that the three did not expect. A middle-aged woman's voice. Warm, gentle, and heartbreakingly sad. My dear, Mother has forgiven you. You must live. For yourself. The dark shadow slowly retreated. The scent of perfume faded. The air began to warm up. Nong Ploy collapsed and cried, hugging Uncle Sommai tightly. Her body trembled. Nong Somjit still stood still. Tears flowed down her face. Everything returned to silence. But inside the room, memories still floated in the shadows. Afternoon sunlight began to filter through the curtains. The soft light hit Ploy's face. Her eyes were still red and bruised. But her expression had changed. There was no fear, no confusion. There was only peace. Uncle Sommai gently stroked his niece's head. His voice was hoarse. I won't let Ploy be alone anymore. He turned to look at Nong Somjit. In his eyes, there was both an apology and a plea. Nong Somjit nodded slowly, although her heart was still shaking. But she knew that what had happened was not just a mystery. It was a wound in her heart. It was love that had not been healed. She walked to the corner of the room. She picked up the broken picture frame. She wiped it gently. Then she put it on the table. Let it go back to its place. The breath in the room started to return to normal. A bird flew to the windowsill. It chirped softly. as if announcing the end of something. But before Nong Somjit could say anything, Ploy looked up. The tears stopped flowing. Her small lips moved again. Mom said, "Have to promise that I won't forget you." Her voice didn't tremble anymore. She spoke in a firm tone, as if she understood something beyond her age. Mrs. Somjit smiled sadly. She walked over and hugged the little girl tightly. No one can forget their mother. Uncle Sommai placed his hands on both her shoulders. His eyes became calmer, filled with determination. He spoke slowly. "It's time for us to take Ploy's mother back home for real." Mrs. Somjit turned to look at him. Her heart beat faster again. But this time, it wasn't because of fear. It was a feeling that something was about to be revealed. Something that had been hidden in this house for too long. Uncle Sommai walked to the old wooden cabinet behind the room. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were resolute. He slowly slid the large cabinet, revealing a small secret compartment embedded in the wooden wall. Mrs. Somjit's eyes widened. She had never known there was a hidden compartment there. Uncle Sommai took out a key from the collar of his shirt and inserted it into the old metal box. Hidden in that compartment, a soft click sound was heard. The lid slowly opened. Inside the box, there were old notebooks, frayed stitches, and several faded envelopes, some of which had not been opened. At the bottom, there was another photo, a picture of a young woman in a graduation gown, smiling brightly, holding her baby in her arms. Uncle Sommai looked at the photo, tears flowing silently. That day, Ploy's parents had another fight. My mother carried me out of the house, but there was an accident on the way. He stopped talking, his voice shaking, his hands gripping the photo tightly. I was angry at my daughter. You just refused to accept her choice." Ms. Somjit raised her hand to cover her mouth. The images in her mind began to connect into a story. The whispers she heard, the scent that floated in, the tears of the little girl. All of them were the voices of a spirit that had never been comforted. Ploy reached out to grab the notebook. She opened it to the last page. The cursive writing said, "I know that Mom loves you. Even if no one believes you, Mom will still be with you. Mom will stay until the people in this house truly forgive each other." Suddenly, a cool breeze blew through the room. The faint scent of perfume floated in again. But this time, it was warm and fragrant. It wasn't a smell that would make your hair stand on end. Ms. Somjit smiled through her tears. Ploy buried her face in her grandfather's chest. As for Uncle Sommai, she stood still, looking out the window at the sunlight. In that light, it seemed like the shadow of a young woman. She was smiling at the edge of the wooden fence, a smile filled with relief. And she quietly left. The shadow slowly faded into the sunlight, like dust floating in the air. No sound, no trace, leaving only a faint warmth that was like an embrace. Ploy looked up. Her small face was covered in tears, but her eyes were calm. She whispered softly, "Mom smiled at me for the first time." Uncle Sommai collapsed, holding his nephew tightly. The heavy heart started to feel lighter. After carrying the guilt for more than 10 years, Mrs. Somjit leaned against the doorframe. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, like wanting to remember everything in this room, to be deeply engraved in her heart. Then she walked over to pick up the curtain, sliding it open to let the light flow in, chasing away the dark shadows clinging to the walls, to disappear along with the past. His house, that used to be full of silence, with the sound of sobbing at night. Now there was soft laughter, the sound of new life. Ploy held her grandfather's hand, leading him to walk out to the front yard. The flowers along the fence were blooming. The fresh scent of the grass soaked in afternoon dew made both of them feel like they were starting over. The girl turned to ask softly, "Grandpa, are we going to school tomorrow?" Uncle Sommi nodded. Of course. But this time, Grandpa will wait for you in front of the school every day. I won't go anywhere anymore. Ploy smiled widely. It was a bright smile that she hadn't seen for a long time. Mrs. Somjit looked at the scene in front of her. Her heart felt warm. She knew that the girl's mother must be standing and watching somewhere. And even though she was gone, but a mother's love still always protects her child. Silent, but steady. Uncle Sommi held Ploy's little hand tightly. He bent down to look into his niece's eyes. His voice was soft, but it contained a promise. From now on, I will listen to you more. I will never ignore the little voice of your heart again. Ploy nodded gently and leaned on her grandfather's shoulder. Her heart beat normally. No shadow of fear. The evening sunlight bathed the entire field. Birds chirped in harmony. The wind blew through the trees, causing the leaves to sway rhythmically. Mrs. Somjit sat down on a bench under the mango tree. One hand stroked Ploy's mother's journal. She thought of the old days. She knew that, even though the supernatural had passed, the wounds in the hearts of the living still needed time to heal. She looked at the little girl and her grandfather who were laughing softly. Those simple tones were full of hope. Then she smiled. Not because the story had ended beautifully, but because it had just begun again. With understanding, Ploy got up, ran around the field. Her laughter echoed throughout the house. The grass swayed with the force of her footsteps. The sky began to turn a pale orange. She stopped running and looked up. Looking at the sky. Mom, I'm still here. And I will be strong. Because you smiled at me again. A cool breeze blew gently. A flower petal fell in front of her. One petal landed on her small palm. Ploy closed her eyes, holding the petal tightly, as if she was holding the last feeling of someone who loved her forever. The petals are as light as feathers, but their weight is full of meaning. Ploy leaned down and kissed the petals gently, like kissing her mother's hand through the wind. She put them in her pocket, looked up again. The evening sky was shining with a soft golden light. Cloud floated by. A figure resembling a woman stood quietly hugging a child. Uncle Sommi walked closer, put his hand on his niece's shoulder. I'm ready to tell you everything about my mother. Ploy nodded. Her small hands gripped the petals tighter, like she was preparing herself to listen to the past that she had the right to know. The two walked back into the house slowly. The wooden door that used to make a creaking sound now opened softly. The whole house seemed to breathe in rhythm with them. No more sobbing. No dark shadows hidden in the corners. Inside the living room, Mrs. Somjit lit a small candle, placed it next to Ploy's mother's photo frame. The candle light flickered, reflecting the shadow of the photo frame to make it come alive again. Uncle Sommi picked up a wooden box, containing notes, letters and photos, and placed it in front of his niece, and started opening each page, telling the story of the young woman who used to be his beloved daughter. His voice was filled with pain, but firm. The story of dreams, stubbornness, parting, and mistakes that he never forgave himself. Ploy sat listening quietly, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes smiling through her tears. Mrs. Somjit sipped hot tea, sat listening like a relative. In this house that used to be filled with silence, now there was the sound of truth. And when all the stories ended, the candle was still burning, unmoved by the wind. Ploy got up, walked to put a flower petal at the end of the picture frame, whispered softly, Mom, I will grow up to be someone you are proud of. The shadow in the room was still, like a spirit that used to wait, to receive the answer she had been waiting for a long time. There was no more sound. There was only silence. That was not sadness, but true peace. The morning began with soft sunlight, peeking through the pale curtains into the room. The birds planted by the window chirped. as if greeting a new life in the old house. Ploy woke up on the thin mattress. She stretched her arms and legs, and turned to smile at the picture of her mother on the table. The sunlight hit her face in the frame. It seemed like she was smiling back. Uncle Mai walked in with a tray of breakfast, hot rice porridge and soft-boiled eggs. The aroma was wafting in. "Today, I will take you to school myself," he said with a smile. Ploy nodded. She dressed neatly in her school uniform, tie her bow straight, and put the completely dried flower petals back in her shirt pocket. She stood in front of the mirror, looked at herself quietly, and said softly, "I will not cry anymore. I am not a child who has to hide my voice anymore." When they walked out of the house, Mrs. Somjit stood watering the plants by the fence. She waved. Ploy ran and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Grandma Chit. If Grandma hadn't come to open the door that day, Mom is probably still crying all alone." Mrs. Somjit's eyes welled up with tears. She leaned down and kissed the girl's forehead. "Mom, you're not crying anymore. It's you who made you smile again." Uncle Mai held his niece's hand. They walked out of the wooden fence. The roadside was filled with morning sunlight. The wind blew gently through the fresh green leaves. When they arrived in front of the school, other children began to enter the door one after another. The sound of talking, laughing. The atmosphere was lively. Ploy turned to hug Ta tightly again. "Ta is waiting for you. I'll hurry back to tell you." Uncle Mai nodded. In his hand, he still held the tightly closed wooden box. Inside there was another letter. The one he didn't dare to open yet, because the name on the envelope was, "To Dad. If one day Dad will listen." He hugged the box tightly. Then he turned back home with slower steps, but more steady than before. The sunlight in front was bright. It was like inviting him to step past the past step by step, to a day warmer than yesterday, even though the traces still remained. But it is no longer a scar. It is a path of a heart that was once broken, but is becoming whole again. When he returned home, Uncle Mai placed the wooden box on the table. He sat still in front of his daughter's photo frame. The morning sunlight shone through the window, casting a shadow on the unopened envelope. His hand trembled slightly, before slowly picking up the letter. The paper that had turned yellow with time still retained the faint scent of old perfume, the scent that used to linger in her bedroom. He slowly unfolded it. The handwriting was written in a sweet handwriting that he remembered well. Every word was like her voice was reading it to him. "Daddy, I know you are angry, but I hope that one day you will open it and listen to my voice." Uncle Mai closed his eyes tightly. A tear fell on the corner of the paper. "I am not perfect, but I try to be the best mother, even though no one believes that a woman like me can raise a child." His breath hitched. The memories from the past came back as a scene. The day he stood and closed the door on his daughter. The day he refused to visit her at the hospital. The day he was silent when she begged, "Father, if one day Ploy grows up, if you ask about Mother, please tell her that Mother loves her the most, more than life." The paper in his hand is wet with tears. Uncle Mai wiped his face with the back of his hand, muttering to himself softly, "Father has heard it, daughter. Father has heard everything." He stood up, walked to the altar, put the letter down in front of him, and bowed 3 times slowly, like asking for forgiveness, acceptance, and release himself from the bondage in his heart. Outside the window, a bird swooped down on the wooden fence, singing clearly, like answering. The sound of the phone in the room rang. It was the voice of the teacher from the school. "Uncle, today Ploy told her about her mother." With a bright smile. "We have never seen her like this before." Uncle Mai smiled with tears. He looked up at the sky, feeling light, like there was someone beside, smiling quietly. And on that day, the old wooden house, came back to life again. Not because of laughter, not because of sunlight, but because of forgiveness, and the undying love of a woman who is still a mother, even in silence, forever. After hanging up the phone with the teacher, Uncle Sam still sat still. The voice on the phone still echoed in his head. A bright smile. We have never seen you like this before. He looked down at his hands. These hands used to push his child away. But today, these hands hugged his granddaughter. At the moment she needed it the most. He stood up again, walked over to pick up the wooden box that contained all the memories, and opened the window. A cool breeze blew in, driving away all the stuffiness from the past. Sunlight hit the letters, photographs, and every page of the record. That light made everything look alive. Not a remnant of the past, but a lesson, the foundation of a new beginning. The sound of small footsteps sounded at the door. Ploy came back home. Her face was flushed from the sun, but her eyes were full of sparkle. Her smile was like the evening sun. Grandpa, I told my friends everything about my mother. No one laughed at me. Some even cried. Uncle Sam opened his arms. Ploy ran in and hugged him tightly. His heart trembled again. But this time, trembled because of pride. Mom must be proud of you. Ploy spoke in a clear voice. Then she took out a dried flower petal. I still keep it. Mom gave it to me. He looked down. The flower petal was still there. Although dry, it was not brittle, like the heart of the little girl who used to be broken. But now it is stronger every day. Should we keep it in a frame? Uncle Sam said softly. Let it be next to my mother's picture forever. Ploy smiled widely. She nodded vigorously. Yes, Grandpa. Let Mom stay with us forever. No need to hide anymore. The two walked to the corner of the Buddha altar, where now there were not only pictures of the deceased, but there were also candles, flower petals, and two hearts, which were beating in the same rhythm again. Even though no one could hear the whole story, even though the truth is just a voice in the shadows. But in this house, no one has to cry alone anymore. Uncle Sam slowly picked up a simple wooden picture frame, carefully placed dried flower petals inside, next to the photo of his daughter, and the letter that he had just finished reading this morning. He closed the picture frame gently, as if afraid of breaking something fragile, even the petals. Early morning, Ploy packed her things in her bag, preparing to leave to start her life as a teacher at a school in a different district. Uncle Sam was waiting to see her off in front of her house. In his hand was a cloth bag. Inside was a small champaka tree. Take this and plant it, my child. Plant it firmly. Let the roots grow deep, like a mother's love that is always deep in your heart. Ploy received the tree from Uncle's hand. She gently knelt down on his lap. Thank you for raising me. Thank you for never making me feel like I have no 1 inch. Uncle Sam smiled. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. But his eyes were full of hope. On the way the bus took Ploy out of the village. She looked back at her old house. She saw the vague shadow of the champaka tree swaying in the wind. In her heart, a voice rang out again. A gentle and steady voice. No matter how far you go, I will always be with you. Ploy closed her eyes, put her hand on the cloth bag, feeling the warmth spreading out, as if love was embracing her all the way ahead. Several months passed. Ploy stood in front of the new champaka tree that she had planted next to her classroom. The tree was still small, but the leaves were fresh green. The first flower had just bloomed. The petals were pure white and gave off a faint fragrance. A group of students ran up to her skirt. Teacher Ploy, what flower is so fragrant? Ploy crouched down, gently patted the child's head, before pointing at the tree. It's called champaka. It's a flower that my mother loves. And every time it blooms, I feel like my mother is smiling at me silently. The children nodded. and smiled back innocently. Ploy looked up at the sky. That was now clear and the sunlight was warm. In her heart, there was no more sadness. There were only beautiful memories. The love that was still fragrant like champaka, and the bond that connected the hearts of a mother and her daughter, crossed even death. He took a deep breath, smiled slightly, and walked back into the classroom, with the laughter of children, and the fragrance that still lingers around her.